for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Adu, the president of Great Neck's United Parent Teacher Council. And I'd like to welcome you all to our UPTC, you didn't have to applause, thank you, Total Community Involvement Sponsored Opioid Panel Discussion titled Not My Child. Looking around at this very crowded room, and even on the night of Game 7 of the World Series, you all came out, so thank you. Makes me both very happy and sad. So happy that we have amazing parent and child involvement from both public and private schools, as well as community members and organizations here tonight. Happy to see local politicians, among them Senator Elaine Phillips, Assemblyman Tony Durso, North Hempstead Town Councilwoman Anna Kaplan will be coming later this evening, Nassau County Legislator Ellen Birnbaum. Happy to see our Great Neck mayors, happy to see our Board of Education members, and happy that our administrators, as well as our Great Neck Public School Superintendent, Dr. Teresa Prendergast, are sitting here among all of us, as well as officers from the Nassau County Police POP Unit. Thank you all. That being said, happy about all of that, I'm so very sad that this opioid epidemic exists, and it's so multi-layered, and that it warrants such an of-the-moment forum. But this is life as we know it now. Look, our world is changing, and changing quickly. To the kids here, we parents never knew the things you all know about at your age. There was no such thing as vaping, and the constant term pre-gaming was never a thing back in our day. Times have changed. We know that this and much more go on now, and while they may not seem to be a big deal to you, or some of you might be rolling your eyes, even outwardly or inwardly about this all, because to you it's nothing but a little bit of fun. These are problems, huge problems. They're gateways that can also lead to much bigger lethal issues. Opioids and their abuse is one such issue. It's now a certifiable epidemic and can hit close to home and affect each and every one of us. I'm sure nearly all of you are thinking this can never happen to me, and I hope you're right. But then again, does anybody ever think this can happen to me? Very rarely, and that's definitely even less of a thought in a high-income neighborhood such as ours. But it can happen. We've seen it happen, heard it happen. Just a few wrong moves can lead towards a very downward spiral. And that's the most frightening thought here. So everyone, try to put your phones away. Listen closely, pay attention, ask questions, and start learning, really learning about this all. Our panel will be touching upon issues that pertain to all of us and cross over various age groups and the entire social spectrum. On that note, I'd like to welcome Jackie Harunian from North Shore Action, who will be moderating tonight's discussion to take over and introduce our panel members as we begin. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Michelle, and of course the Great Neck UPTC for all that you do. I also want to thank the library for its strong support of this program and inform you that it will be broadcast on public access television, so we will have links available to share the wisdom of this panel with those of us who could not make it tonight. Thank you, Erica Bradley of PATV. I also want to thank Shahruz Shaheri for all of his efforts in promoting tonight's program. My name is Jackie Harunian. My husband Maurice and I have lived in Great Neck for over 3 decades, and our 4 children attended the amazing public schools here. My youngest, Joey, where are you? Just turned 13. And so like many of you, I have a vested interest in tonight's topic. Can we have a showing of hands of how many students are here from the middle school through the high school from Great Neck? Wonderful. Thank you for coming tonight. I also practiced family law for over 20 years in Great Neck and was on the front lines of advising families in crisis, many of whom were dealing with issues of untreated mental illness and addiction. At the beginning of this year, I joined a new but very dynamic local group called North Shore Action, which gave me the opportunity to moderate this panel. Tonight's program is in line with the mission of our group, bridging divides in our very diverse community and standing together as one. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight as part of that effort. Our goal is to inform you about the clear and present danger of opioids to our children and to support and fortify one another as a community, especially those who are dealing with drug addiction and mental health challenges in their households. I know that I speak on behalf of this panel when I say that these are very serious subjects but need not be shameful ones. Our forum is entitled Not My Child because no one wants to think that their child is using street drugs or engaging in reckless and even deadly personal behavior. But that is the exact circumstance facing parents in Great Neck, and tragically, we have had fatal overdoses in Great Neck, students from both the public schools and the private schools over the past several years. And on Long Island, there have been over 400 opioid deaths in the past year alone. These deaths affect thousands of parents and grandparents within 10 or 20 miles of here. And that adds up to tens of thousands of devastated friends, neighbors, and other family members. All on Long Island, all in 1 year. The young people taking these risks are honor students and athletes, great kids from loving, wonderful families, in the suburbs, not in the inner cities or lower socioeconomic areas. And when even the Hasidic community in Brooklyn is reporting a dramatic rise in opioid addiction, you know we cannot blame the epidemic on bad morals or poor parenting or a lack of willpower. As part of my preparation for tonight, I came across a few interesting facts. First, by a show of hands, how many of you had no idea that last year a doctor who lives in Great Neck was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison for prescribing opioids? So he was a drug dealer masquerading as a doctor, one of many. And here's another interesting fact. Our country's National Opioid Commission revealed a few months ago that the amount of opioids prescribed by doctors, such as the one that was arrested in Great Neck, were enough for every single American man, woman, and child to be medicated around the clock for 3 weeks straight. So thankfully, our president is taking some steps to address this. And just days ago, he declared that opioids are a public health emergency. And finally, did you know that for the very first time, despite the fact that overall life expectancy is increasing in our general population due to advances in medical care, life insurance companies are actually lowering average life expectancy because of opioid deaths and addiction. So the good news is that addiction is preventable and very treatable because it's a brain disorder. There are cures and remedies out there just like for any other illness, and we're going to hear about that tonight. As a community, we can offer solutions and support for children, their parents, and our schools. The topics covered by tonight's program will cover the gamut of addiction, prevention, treatment, and recovery. We aim to increase understanding, reduce stigma, and provide practical take-home solutions that will improve the health of our young people starting right now. And we want tonight to be interactive, so we are going to be passing around index cards. The ladies from North Shore Action, you see them in the t-shirts. You can write down your own questions and pass them up, and we will present them to the panel. Please understand that there are a lot of you here, and time does not permit every question to be answered. And we want to continue our efforts after tonight. So we're also going to be handing out a sign-up sheet for a Great Neck Drug Awareness Parent Task Force, which is being activated tonight. So if you want to learn more about it, if you want to be part of it, if you want to get Narcan Training, which you're going to hear about tonight, please add your name to the sign-up sheet, and we'll make sure you get that information. So I'm now going to announce the name of our amazing panelists, and after that, they will each have an opportunity to introduce themselves very briefly as they answer specific questions pertaining to their role in combating the opioid crisis. We are privileged to have on our panel Detective Pamela Stark of the Nassau County Police Heroin Task Force, Amanda Chiaffi, Education and Training Supervisor for LICAD, the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependency, Maria Alyssa Quadra, CEO of COPAY, right here in Great Neck, Kathy Samuels, here on behalf of the Coalition Against Substance Abuse, known as CASA in Manhasset. And finally, Zachary Goldfarb, a very experienced paramedic who, along with many other volunteers, saves lives every day right here in Great Neck. All right, so let's get to this. First, for Detective Stark, can you tell us about what you do every day to deal with the drug epidemic on Long Island, and how is so-called Heroin 2.0 different from the drugs that young people experimented with 30 years ago?
You want me to answer it here?
You can stay there.
Can everybody hear me if I'm speaking?
Yeah.
Now you can. Hi, I'm Pam Stark, and I'm a detective with the Nassau County Police Department. And I would really like to first give you a round of applause, because this is wonderful. The outreach in your community is amazing, and I appreciate it so much. Since 2009, my position has been the forefront, the outreach to the department from narcotics to the community. I also receive information from the community and bring it right back to the department, right? So we're finding out exactly what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and trying to communicate together. I call myself pretty much the bridge. In my position in 2010, the department went out and took asset forfeiture money. The Commissioner of Police right now, Patrick Ryder, he was in charge of asset forfeiture money, and he came to me and he gave us monies to use to combat this in an out-of-the-box way. So one of it was curriculum, Too Good for Drugs, which is from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I was sent away to be Train the Trainer. To date, I've certified over 480 administrators from all schools, certified every school district in Nassau County, all 56 school districts, and we have shipped the curriculum right to the door using asset forfeiture. And for those of you that do not know what that money is, that's money from drug seizures. So it's kind of poetic, right? And also, we did a video, and the video was aimed for middle school, and it's on the gateway drugs: weed, prescription drugs, and alcohol. And on our steering committee, I used people in recovery that helped us actually write the script. It's 15 minutes. We hand-delivered it to every school in Nassau County, again, at no cost, using asset forfeiture money. And we won 7 awards with that video. We won 3 Tellys, 2 Marcans, 1 Davy, and 1 Communicator Award. And again, using money from seizures and trying to give it back to the community. I also am out in the community and speaking on this epidemic very passionately. If you're in this audience and this is something new to you and it hasn't touched you either immediately, or maybe a neighbor, a family member, a distant relative, then you're very rare. Because I don't know anybody who hasn't been touched by this epidemic. And we really need to stand together, right? And we need to fight this. So the awareness presentation that I've been doing is the evolution of opiates to the perfect storm, heroin. My position also in the department in 2014, the Nassau County Police Department actually won first place in the world, International Chief of Police Award. Dubai came in second for our efforts. So we've really been on the cutting edge and using the asset forfeiture money, which has been a great help and a boost. But it's really not changing it, right? We have such problems out there, and we have families that are hurting. And the partners that we have met along the way, the police department, have been great to us. They've allowed us to be on the same path. Nassau County has really come from a lot of strength, where I would know almost every person on this panel, first name. We work together constantly. So I can tell you that when I go out and I'm in Atlanta or Orlando, or I've been requested to speak all over, it is unusual that we work in such a unified way. Nassau County, I'm so proud of us, but we have so much more to do. And so what I'm going to ask of you tonight, anything that you learn, please bring it back. Take our numbers, call us. Any way we can help you, please bring it back to us. Thank you.
I mentioned 400 deaths on Long Island in 1 year. What is different about the drugs that are out there today versus what was out there when parents in this room were teenagers?
The opioids that are out, that started in the mid-90s, when doctors were told by the medical society to start prescribing for pain. The way they hold on to the receptor of the brain is different than the old narcotics, right? So they're held onto the brain to actually start a person to become dependent. Where years ago you could take a narcotic for pain, and it wasn't after 2 weeks that the body would become dependent, and yet it is today. After 2 weeks of using these narcotics, the body becomes dependent. And yet doctors in this country have mandatory pain education is less than 8 hours. In Canada, it's 20 hours. To become a veterinarian in the United States, mandatory for pain education is 38 hours. So it became extremely cunning in a way when we were told in the mid-90s to go to doctors and to be treated for pains. Doctors were now prescribing these narcotics, and they had no, they were listening to the pharmaceutical companies that were telling them that they were non-addicting, non-habit forming. So this epidemic started by the miscommunication. So if I'm the patient and I'm being prescribed these, how would I know anything different than what I'm told? And we've always had this recreational user of opioids. We've always had the recreational user. But they weren't told this information wasn't being put out there. So it's the way it holds onto the brain that has started the epidemic.
Okay, so my understanding is what's out there on the street right now is fentanyl, and one of them is a form of elephant tranquilizer that's sometimes mixed in with marijuana. Can we speak to marijuana, which we know that children in this community and many other communities use at younger ages, and the risk to children that just think they're having some marijuana when really the issue is fentanyl?
All right, so there's heroin. Heroin first started, just so that you know, it was actually manufactured by a pharmaceutical company called Bayer Aspirin. Bayer Aspirin started it in 1888, and when heroin first came out, you didn't need a prescription. You could actually purchase it right over the counter. Yet a year later, Bayer Aspirin came out with aspirin, right? And you needed a script to receive that Bayer aspirin. So how do we find out that we have issues on the street? Is when we have crime, addiction, or death. So Bayer was under the influence of not knowing until they had an addiction problem in the early 1900s. At that point in time, they took heroin off the counter, and they didn't even allow for it to have a script. Fentanyl is actually used in the medical society as well. Fentanyl is approximately 50 times stronger than heroin. Once heroin was put out in the late 1800s, that recipe is out on the street now, so now it's an illicit drug. Fentanyl is not an illicit drug, right? It's actually prescribed and it's used in a medical society, but it's 50 times stronger. People have been putting this in heroin, and people are dying 50 times stronger, and it's called either fatal or hopefully non-fatal overdoses. Do the people that are purchasing heroin know that the fentanyl is in there? No. They have no clue. It's like Russian roulette. Carfentanil is originally zoologists were using this on elephants as a tranquilizer. That is 100 times stronger than heroin. 100 times stronger. Then our heroin too, by the way. In the 60s and the 70s, heroin had like 20 to 28% potency. Now our heroin is over 80% potent. So we're not talking about the old heroin. When it comes to weed, marijuana that's on our streets, who knows what's in this, right? It's open. It is open. We are not knowing what is in these substances until it gets tested later. I was just speaking with a school today. I was in a middle school, and the gentleman was telling me, oh, there's no problem with weed. We know exactly what's in it. Because in this country, right, we have a false sense of security when it comes to marijuana. We think it has to do with the medical society, right? We're helping people. That's not why people are using it, right? They're using it to get high. But when I went up to that same guy, we really got along well at the end, and he was trying to like combat me, and I really love young people. I love speaking to young audiences, middle school, high school, they're great, they're so honest. And he said to me, oh no, there's nothing that's in there, and I would have no problem smoking anybody's weed. So then I gave him my water bottle, because I always carry around these water bottles, right? And I said, will you drink my water bottle? I want you to drink it right now. I had drank half of it. How do you know what's in it? He pushed that water bottle away so far, so fast, because we have trained our young people properly. not to eat anything, not to drink anything that's open. Why are we not doing the same thing when it comes to these illicit drugs? We really need to think about it. And we don't know what's in these drugs because it isn't manufactured by a perfect recipe until after the fact.
Maria Quadra from COPE. Can you please tell us about your background at COPE in Great Neck? And after that, please tell our audience, what is the first step for a parent to take if they suspect that their child is using drugs? Okay?
Good evening, my name is Maria Lisa Quadra, and I am the CEO, Executive Director of COPE. And I have been a provider of chemical dependency treatment services and mental health services for 29 years. And so for 29 years here in Great Neck, there is a medically managed intensive outpatient clinic where we can do assessments and provide families with not only information, treatment, and prevention. Because prevention, I think, is a big part of what needs to be done. I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Pamela had said. I think that one of the reasons that we see overdoses more often is because the heroin that is available to kids is, as she said, much more potent, but they don't know if fentanyl is in it. So a young person can use it once, use it a second time, and it's contaminated, and they can die the second time. And all of us know, when you're young, you don't think you're ever going to die. You think you can kind of do whatever you want to do, and it's a time in life where kids want to experiment. What's important for children to know and to learn is that experimentation can be fatal in the environment that we're in. Chemical dependency is a disease process, and it should never be confused with a weakness in character. People, once they are addicted, lose the ability to choose whether to continue using, so they do need professional treatment. In response to your question, because I don't want to go over time, the thing that I think is very important for parents to think about is, in our experience, and we've been providing care for almost 30 years, the children who are very vulnerable to addiction are children with undiagnosed and untreated mental illness. And sometimes as parents, we don't recognize the symptoms of mental illness. We think our child is being difficult, or they're moody, or they're lazy, or they just don't want to do what we tell them to do, and they could have an underlying mental illness. So I would suggest do a real honest inventory of who the family is. Are there relatives that suffer from depression and anxiety? Are there relatives who suffer from psychotic process? Is it a grandmother or an aunt or a cousin? And if you see symptoms in your child, you can call us. We're right here in Great Neck. We're completely confidential. We can assess what's going on and provide care. One of the reasons that children use substances is because they are self-medicating the symptoms of a mental illness. They are in pain emotionally and psychologically. And the thing about drugs is that they work, but they also destroy the person in the process. And so treatment and early intervention is the way to go. Most of the clients that are referred to us come to us after they have gotten in terrible trouble. They've lost their families. Some of them have been arrested. Some of them have hurt people. They all tell us that their problem started anywhere between the age of 12 and 17. And that really speaks to early prevention. And very quickly, we have a program at COPE. It's $150 to meet with a counselor, with a child, and you can have a session. If it's indicated that we do a screening to see if a child is abusing substances that are very dangerous to them, we can do a screening, and there's a follow-up appointment to start the process of getting a child into early treatment. So that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Before you go away, Maria, so I just want to make sure I understand what you said. You're saying between the ages of 12 and 17, a parent should be looking at their child, seeing whether they see signs of mental illness, which could include being anxious or nervous or depressed, And those children should be given special attention by the parents, and maybe because those children are more at risk for experimenting with drugs.
Yes.
Did we all hear that? Okay, so that was very good advice. Thank you very much. All right. So next we have Amanda Chiaffi from LICAD. Can you tell us what the services are at LICAD? And since I know that you are already in Great Neck schools and you do a lot of outreach, can you tell us what types of intervention is working in the schools and at what ages? Okay?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. My name is Amanda Chiaffi. I'm a licensed social worker and I work at LICAD, the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. Very long name, so we go by LICAD. So we do a lot of different things at LICAD. I want to inform you all of services that are available to you and your community. Very important that you know about them. LICAD's a small nonprofit. We work out of Westbury, Hauppauge, Riverhead. Oh boy. Okay. Riverhead and Southampton. So we're all over the islands. We offer people any kind of services that they might need to treat and to help substance use disorder. So we're talking about people who might not recognize that there is a problem going on, or maybe a family member that recognizes there's something going on. So we oftentimes link people to treatment, such as copay, such as inpatient treatment, detox, outpatient treatment, whatever level of care that client needs. So we're a referral-based agency. We also do counseling and family support. We have to recognize this affects a lot of people, like Pam was talking about. If you haven't been personally touched, I guarantee the person sitting next to you has. So we offer family support. We offer a lot of different services in the realm of law enforcement, and there's a new program coming out called Pivot that's actually looking to positively get people who might be involved in law enforcement or any kind of legal consequences to get them involved in the treatment process first, right before that disease kind of takes hold of them. And like our other panelists are reiterating, that a lot of times people can no longer function once they're kind of have the grip of the disease. So talking about school-based prevention, we are in 102 schools on Long Island. Laura Navarro, my coworker, and I. We just came off of Ribbon Week last week where we were in Great Neck schools, both high school and middle school. We provide evidence-based treatment. It's really important that you know that, because a lot of programs, like Pam is saying, Too Good for Drugs, we're trained in these things, right? So they're actually evidence-based. So we talk about Too Good for Drugs. We're trained in life skills, which is one of the newer programs out there that really looks to address what's underlying the substance use. So we go in, we have to talk about these gateway drugs. The average age of first use in our country is 11 to 13 years old. Average age of first use. Right, so we have to talk about things like marijuana, alcohol, nicotine, leading into things like possibly prescription drugs and other types of things. But what's underlying all this? Mental health concerns. We talk about self-esteem, healthy communication, right? Building all of those skills so that the person doesn't need or feel like they need to pick up a substance in the first place. So a lot of what we do in relation to school-based prevention and outreach is evidence-based, K through 12 and beyond. So we're in schools in every community, and I could say safely, I'd say every single community has very similar issues. A lot of them starting with some of those mental health concerns that we need to address, absolutely. So it's a little bit more about what LICAD does in relation to prevention and education, as well as counseling services. So I think it's important for you all to know we're a resource out there. We're in this community as well as many surrounding communities in the school systems as well.
I just want everyone to know that before you walk out, we do have resources and information about all the experts up here and their agencies, and you're definitely welcome to take one on your way out. And UPTC and North Shore Action will also be sending you follow-up information so that you have it. We also have index cards. If anyone wants to ask a question, we're going to pose questions that you might have. So raise your hand, and one of our volunteers is going to come around and hand you an index card. So next I'm going to call up Zach Goldfarb, who is a paramedic right here in Great Neck. Zach, can you please tell us about your background and what you have personally dealt with as a volunteer, or what you're aware of in terms of emergency response, including Narcan, to reverse overdose? Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. What an impressive crowd. This is great to see a room full of people with such concern, and you should be. And the good news, I think, is to say that in Great Neck proper, this isn't perhaps our biggest problem, which is not to say it's not a problem. It's just to say we're sort of blessed, but there are many other communities, and certainly in some of our houses, we're not so blessed. And that's why it's so important that we're having this conversation. So I just want to acknowledge, first of all, my name is Zachary Goldfarb. I'm from the Vigilant Fire Company, and I'm here representing Chief Josh Forst. And we are here because we are your first responder for emergencies, medical emergencies, everywhere north of the tracks on the Great Neck Peninsula. So anywhere you are, we're going to be here to help or to respond if you have an emergency. So that said, of course, some of the emergencies that we respond to involve people with what we call altered mental states, or a condition where they're not awake and alert and able to chat with us. And one of the first things that we have to deal with is figure out what's going on and how can we help them, and of course that's what we do. So we provide two levels of care. We have basic life support, which are emergency medical technicians. We have advanced life support, which are paramedics. You've probably heard a lot about this conversation over months because we've been speaking to the community about this. And so we respond when you call 911 or when you call our direct dial number, and we come as quickly as we can with our professional EMS responders to help you. So unfortunately, sometimes we come and we find ourselves in a situation where there are young people in a house, sometimes with parents home, sometimes without parents home, and we find that substances are involved. And I know this is not a shock to anybody, but I can tell you that our volunteers are people from this community, and our volunteers are people just like you. In fact, if anybody would like to volunteer, we're always looking for folks. And they're people just like you, and they walk in and we find family members who are with an altered mental state or abusing a substance or involved in a substance, and it's not always even intentional. Sometimes it's accidental, it's inadvertent. You take the wrong pill, you're not sure what it is, you take a pill at night, you take two, you thought you took one, then you take another one, then you didn't realize you had taken it. So substances are all about us. So I want to talk for just a second. Jackie said, tell you about my background. So I'm a paramedic for 39 years. When I started out as a paramedic, we were with, you said now we're at Heroin 2.0, so I started at Heroin 1.0, and Heroin 1.0 was actually heroin. And in those days, which is in the 70s, and I was working in the city in Brooklyn and Manhattan and the Bronx, and typically, and I think probably this is the image that many of us adults perhaps like to conjure up, is a substance abuse or an opiate overdose is somebody laying on a street corner in raggedy clothes with a needle sticking out of their arm. And those are a lot of the calls that I responded to. And you mentioned Narcan, and so we use Narcan. We were using it 39 years ago. We're still using it today. And Narcan is a great drug for converting or antagonizing against an opiate and enabling someone who's not breathing to start breathing again. So it was great then. We used it a lot, and we still use it a lot. And of course, in places like the city, you would imagine we use it a lot. But now we find that this type of problem is here in our homes, and it's maybe not Heroin 1.0, but Heroin 2.0. So one of the things that was mentioned was fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic, so one of the first things that tells you is it's chemically built. It's not from a poppy plant like opium was, which is opium and heroin, which are natural, morphine. But this is synthetic. It's cooked up in somebody's lab, and they can make it, well, you just don't have that kind of quality control like when you buy your Bayer aspirin and you know it's exactly 325 milligrams in that pill. This is something that could be anything, and so you're never really sure. And so if you're a user and you say, hey, someone's got some pot or someone's got some dope or whatever they have, and let's try it, you just don't know what the quality of that product's going to be. So you just don't know how it's going to react with your system or how it's going to react on you today or how it might interact with some other substance that you may have ingested. And for example, it's not uncommon that our substance abusers have multiple substances. So yeah, they took this, but they also smoked that, and they drank that, and they mixed some of this, and some of it, they don't even know what was going on. We had a girl the other night behind Ralph's, and she was in altered mental state, and she was a teenager, and unfortunately, she's fine, she's alive, but unfortunately, she was in a situation where she had some sort of substance. What is it? Who knows? We get there, we have to try and figure it out. We have to try and manage a patient. This is difficult, and that person I'm talking about is probably a peer to some of you in this audience, maybe a child to some of you in this audience, or a neighbor or someone like that. So this is very much in our homes and in our lives, and it's something that we need to consider in reality. So a couple of points I just want to leave you with as a thought, because I look out at a room full of parents and kids, and I just want to tell you that as kids, you're first responders. You know, people look at us, blue uniform, very nice, you're a first responder, that's pretty cool. Well, I want to tell you that every one of you young folks in this room is a first responder, and you should think of yourself in that way because you may find yourself at some pregame or some party or some evening or some event, and suddenly your friend or a friend of a friend or your friend's cousin-in-law, whatever it might be, is not responding to you. And if you know what to do and know how to respond to that, that may make the difference between life and death. So as kids, I want you to realize that you can save a life, and if you learn how to apply some life-saving techniques, for example, learning CPR, big deal, it's a big deal, and you can actually save a life. We've had a number of lives saved in our community by young people who learned CPR and were able to intervene. You can learn how to administer Narcan, and Narcan, by the way, so it's a prescription drug, but it's available. Kits are given out. You can take a class, and now I'm talking maybe to the parents in the room or to the adults in the room. You're also first responders, and you're first responders in two ways. The first way is you're a first responder by being able to intervene if you're paying attention. A lot of times I think what I see is parents who don't pay attention. I'm a parent. I've got 2 kids of my own and 4 more kids in my new family, so I've got a lot of kids around me. And thank God they're beautiful kids, but I've learned as a parent that you have to pay attention to your kids. And I'm not lecturing anybody on parenting, but sometimes we get very busy and caught up in our lives and the many things that are going on. The first response that a parent has is to intervene when they see something's going on or think something's awry. And I suspect, and I'm not trying to be gender specific here, but I suspect the moms know what I'm talking about. And the dads are thinking, yeah, I'm paying attention as they change the channel. Maybe not calling anyone out. But you're the first intervener because you can detect when there's something going on. You know when there's something going on with your kid, and if you're paying attention, you know what it is. And like I said, 6 kids, so I see a lot of things going on, and I know when to intervene, and I know how to intervene, and fortunately, so far, our kids are doing okay. The second thing is, as a parent, you're a first responder. As an adult in this room, you're a first responder because you also can encourage people around you to learn CPR, to learn how to administer Narcan, to learn how to use a defibrillator, which they're starting to become more prevalent in our public buildings and our sports fields, etc. So you can take an action that can help save a life before rescue ever gets there, before we get out of the station. You could have somebody who's not breathing breathe. You can have somebody who doesn't have a heartbeat restore a heartbeat. You can do a lot. So you're not powerless. You have a lot of capability. Think about that as a first responder. And the last point I want to make is this. We have an issue in our society where we give our kids a lot of mixed messages. And I just want you to think about this for a second. I put the news on this morning, maybe you did as well, and I heard, here's the big news. Corona beer, right? We're like a Corona little wine. So Corona has now purchased 10% of a company in Canada, and this is a company that sells marijuana that's going to be in the beverage. And the best part about it, no calories. So I'm thinking, how cool. And they even said, it's not even a beer. It's just like pot juice or something, but no calories, and you can just drink it. So I thought, that's cool. As I was having my orange juice, I said, maybe I could just get a little of this. But think about the messages that we're giving. So on the one hand, we're telling our kids, just say no, don't do drugs, stay away from all this, bad. We talk about gateway drugs, etc. And then on the other hand, we say, oh, but I could have a little Corona with pot, that's okay. Or it's okay to have medical marijuana, that's okay. But, oh, marijuana's bad. Or we say, oh, but we can legalize marijuana. Let's go to Colorado and get high. So what messages are we giving our kids? So it's our job as parents and as adults to make a clear message to our kids about what's okay and what's not, and about understanding the differences so that they can make informed choices, and about preparing the people around us to be first responders in our community. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thanks, Zach. So we do have a sign-up sheet going around for Narcan training, and I invite anyone who wants to learn how to do it. I actually went to the training. It takes less than an hour, and it is unbelievable to realize that you can reverse an overdose. You can actually save a life by putting a nasal spray of Narcan if you have the kit and you've had the training.
The time to administer that, or the time when it's needed, is when the person stops breathing. The problem with the narcotics, whether it's synthetic or a natural-born narcotic, is that it gets to the receptors that make you want to breathe, and it stops them. So you don't want to breathe. So everything else is fine. In fact, they tell me you feel great until you stop breathing. So we're okay, but if we stop breathing or if the breathing slows down, that's when we need the medicine. And you don't have 3 hours, and you don't have an hour, and you have 4 minutes when brain death starts. That's 4 minutes. Remember what I was saying a minute ago about first responders? if you're not prepared to give rescue breathing, just rescue breathing, that's just your mouth. If you're not prepared to give rescue breathing to your loved one, when you walk into your kid's bedroom and you find them, they're not your kid, of course, God forbid, your friend, your kid's friend on the floor. If someone's not prepared to do rescue breathing, 4 minutes we have brain death. 6 minutes, gone. Useless. I could have all the Narcan in the world. It's not going to help them. So we try, and we resuscitate, and a lot of times it doesn't work after 6 minutes because you have brain death. That's why your first response is so important. You'll make the difference. We'll get there and say, hey, that's great. You were able to resuscitate them, or maybe we won't. So 4 to 6 minutes, that's the critical time frame. If they're not breathing, we have to open the airway, get the Narcan on board, and if it's not related to narcotics, you still have to breathe for them. 4 to 6 minutes without breathing, or you're in trouble. Take a CPR class, please. Learn how to do CPR.
So from what I understand,
Add one thing?
yes, of course.
Before you do anything, call 911.
That's
and
right.
then continue.
Right, from what I understand, Vigilant is going to be offering potentially some sort of training for CPR and Narcan. So please put your name on the sign-up sheet. We need more people in this community, more young people, more parents that are trained to save a life. Because you can't leave someone who's not breathing and think they're going to get better on their own. They could, God forbid, pass away by the next morning. We need to save, and you can save the life. The Narcan actually saves lives. All right, our last speaker, and I just want you to all appreciate, these are truly experts in their field. Every single person sitting up here is an expert in this field, and the last one I'm going to call up is Kathy Samuels. And Kathy, please tell us about your involvement at CASA and all the other background information that parents need to know. Thank you, Kathy.
First, I want to just recognize and send our condolences to anybody here who's lost a family member. You know, it has affected all of us. Pam says it all the time. She's out in the community. But, you know, I got into this field very much like Jackie did tonight. You know, it was out of a grassroots concern about what was going on within my own community. I have been working for the past 9 years in prevention, running what they call a drug-free community support program grant. And that grant is specific to reducing underage drinking and prescription drug use and marijuana use. And it looks at prevention from a scientific standpoint. And I can't get into all of the things we do, but there are some key things that I really want to drive home tonight, hopefully within the time frame. But I was working in Manhasset. I'm now working down in Massapequa, they've been devastated by the opioid and heroin epidemic. So I'm hopeful to make a difference in that community. But what I've learned from my work in coalitions is that while every community is different, when it comes to youth substance misuse, some of the things are very much the same. And I want to look to the data. What does the data tell us? And the data here in Nassau County tells us that kids between the ages of 12 and 17, first and foremost, are drinking, and they are also smoking marijuana. Many of you might have seen the NBA star Chris Heron. He has been throughout Long Island lecturing. He will be in Manhasset in January. And he has considerable impact on kids as well as adults. And Heron does not shy away. He speaks very, very bluntly about the irony of our parents today, in that we think that we can keep our kids safe in our basements with the red Solo cup. And that parents sometimes do think, with all good intentions, that they're doing kids a favor. And it's actually the opposite. It's the complete opposite. Because we know, all of the treatment professionals here will tell you, that when kids start drinking under the age of 15, they're 7 times more likely to have a substance use problem later on in life. And when it comes to alcohol, many of us will think, well, I did it, what's the big deal? And science today, science tells us much differently. Again, science is telling us that the brain is affected. The athlete's body is affected. Athletic training is negated. All of your organs are affected by alcohol. And the developing teen brain is at stake. The brain does not develop until the age of 25. Think about what changes in your checkbook when you stop writing high insurance for your child's driving, Okay, the insurance companies know what they're talking about because the children are considered to be better drivers by the age of 25. Their brains are fully developed. So, one of the things I mentioned about underage drinking is that today's kids are binge drinking, okay? They are getting what they call wasted. All of the kids here know what I'm talking about. They're drinking 5, 6 drinks within a 2-hour period. They're not having a beer socially. They're taking 5 shots of vodka, okay? And when you have that kind of a situation, okay, kids are more likely to engage in things that they normally would not. They're going to be in situations where there'll be sexual influences going on that maybe they would never even do if they weren't under the influences. They also, think about the fact that if a child is under the influence of alcohol, it just takes that one moment for one person to come in the room and lay down a line of heroin on the table, or pass that joint around that's laced with fentanyl. It takes one moment when a kid does not have a full grasp of their senses, which is why the underage drinking laws are in place. Many of our officers are here today will tell you there is social hosting going on in many communities, not just here, not just Manhasset, across Long Island, across New York State. And it's something that we as parents, as communities, have to be mindful of in terms of our kids. So I want to bring it back to today's issue, is what can we do as parents? And first and foremost, you're here tonight, you're educating yourself on the issue. Maria, Amanda mentions mental health issues. And these are things that you really have to understand and be aware of. Go, technology, go on Google. Go to these drugfree.org, combatheroin.newyork.gov. Nassau County has a heroin prevention website that you can also go to. You can access parenting tools through the iTunes store. There's Talk They Hear You for younger parents in terms of trying to engage conversations with your kids, as well as an app called Talk Sooner. Our county, our state has multiple resources on heroin addiction. But most importantly, when you walk away tonight, think about, do you know what's in your medicine cabinet right here as you're sitting here? If you don't know what's in your medicine cabinet, you should know what's in your medicine cabinet. You need to go home and you need to take inventory. There's plenty of inventory sheets through OASIS that you can access. And after you take your inventory, make sure that you're going to lock up your medications. Store them in secure places, because there are youngest kids who are gaining access to medications that are left laying around. Dispose of your medications. Nassau County Police Department has lock boxes in the precinct that you can just walk in and deposit. I think your water district had a take-back event most recently. These are ways we can get rid of medications in the home, and the big push for that is that we know that most kids who are misusing prescription drugs are getting them from friends and family. They're getting them from your neighbor's house. They're getting them even at real estate open houses. Many real estate agencies are telling their homeowners to get rid of their medications in the home. So we mentioned earlier, in terms of prescription medications and mixing with alcohol. The question I want to ask also is, are we a good role model when it comes to taking medications? Are we taking our medications as prescribed? Are we mixing alcohol with our medications, which can be deadly? It can be deadly the first time you do it. And these are issues that are so important to role model in front of our children. It's very easy to come home and pour a glass of wine and say I had a bad day, and that the glass of wine might help me get through the night. But these are things that our children watch, and it's something we need to be mindful of as we are raising our kids. We mentioned earlier about being a first responder. Teens should know that New York State has a good Samaritan Law. Parents should be aware of this law. Go Google it. What it basically means is that if you're in a difficult situation, you think somebody's overdosed, you can call for help. And so long as there's not illegal activity going on there, you will not get in trouble. And that accounts for prescription drug overdose, heroin overdose, as well as alcohol poisoning. So, keep in mind, this is not the world that most of us grew up in. I think in my generation, we had a phone in the house, one phone. We have this constant interconnectedness that's going on today, but our teens are living in an extreme world. Our college students are living in an extreme world where binge drinking and hazing and all sorts of other things are going on that present them in life and death situations. And the other part of it is kids are posting all these things across Facebook. Be aware of your kids' Facebook accounts. It might lend into what they're doing, and I know teens, you might get upset about it, but look, we are responsible to keep you safe. That's our job. Our job is to help you be raised to be healthy, responsible people in our communities, and we need to keep you safe. So in closing, I just want to say, prevention begins as early as age 3. And our work as parents is never done. It doesn't stop when they graduate high school. It doesn't stop when they graduate college. We have to continue to have a healthy relationship with our young adults as well as when they grow into adulthood. And parents know that research shows one of the biggest protective factors that will reduce the likelihood your child will use substances is your disapproval of underage drinking as well as drug use. So you have the power, parents. And thank you very much. Thank you, Jackie.
All right, we got some very, very interesting questions, and I guess it's a good thing some of these are anonymous because the first question is, and I guess I'm going to direct it to Detective Stark, if you could hold the mic. If you call 911 during a drug overdose, will that lead to an arrest?
The Good Sam Law, can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you can stand up, it's fine.
I don't think that this was working before, that's why.
Okay, go ahead.
The Good Sam Law that Kathy Samuels was speaking about, the Good Sam Law is you call 911 if someone is overdosing, we are there to save a life. Okay, we are responding to save a life. I believe it was 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, John Bon Jovi's daughter actually put it in the news. She was in a town in Hamilton, New York, and I believe that might be Colgate, and she had suffered an overdose, and it hit the news. And the Good Sam Law made her survive, right? Somebody in that college called 911, and because of their fame, it actually hit the news. So any type of awareness of this is wonderful. So call 911, and we are there to save your life.
We have a follow-up question that relates to what Kathy Samuels about. She mentioned the social host law. We have a lot of parents here and a lot of children, and like any other community, there are a lot of parties during the high school years. Can you tell specifically to the parents what happens if something goes wrong in the house, God forbid, or give us some specific examples based on your experience. What are the parents risking if they have parties in their home? And we all know there was a parent in Great Neck that was arrested a year or two ago, and charges were, I think, eventually dismissed, but there was a parent who was arrested after having a party with underage drinking in Great Neck.
Okay, so the social host law is not just target parents' responsibility. It's the age of 18 years of age and older. 18 years of age and older are responsible for those who are drinking while they're in the presence. That 18-year-old does not have to be drinking. That 18-year-old does not have to have purchased that alcohol. That 18-year-old is responsible for those around them that are drinking under the age of 18. I can't stress this enough because I had a friend of mine about 2 years ago call me up. I always seem to get a lot of calls, when there's a problem. They didn't call me for my birthday, but they did call me, and it was horrific, right? It was really horrific because they said to me, Pam, they live in central Nassau, and they were on their way back from their summer house in the North Fork, good friends of mine, and they were away during junior prom time at a local high school, not too far away from here. And so they had left for the summer house, but their son, who was 17, was supposed to go to the junior prom. Their daughter was away and she went to Cortland. And Nicole is her name, and Nicole was away and it was her first year at Cortland. Nicole struggled for her grades, but tried a lot. So this was the week of finals, working nonstop. Nicole takes the bus home to surprise her parents. Parents aren't home, but her brother is having a party because he didn't go to the junior prom. No, it was party time. And so Nicole is 19. He's 17, Kyle, right? So she walks into this house that has alcohol. People are drinking. She did not purchase it. She did not drink it. She went to bed. One of the parents picked up their child and decided to go to the 3rd precinct. And from that point on, Nicole became responsible. They came to the house. Nicole was arrested, right? The social host law is 18 years of age and older. Now I know we did not write the law, but we do have to apply it. Now Nicole was not able to go back to college, right? Because with this open lawsuit that was going on against her, and because it had, I think it was 31 young people signed a deposition saying they were drinking in the home. So it became a very large lawsuit. And of the 31, 2 stated that they had gotten injured in that home, right? And they didn't go to the hospital. Now this is what my friend was telling me, but he seemed pretty honest about it. And guess what? They sued the parents, and the homeowners did not cover it because it was a criminal act, right? And they had a nice lifestyle. I think over $680,000 cash they had to come up with, these 2 families, to settle out of court. Did this affect the family? Yes. And you know what the most amazing thing is? Nicole and Kyle are not that close, right? And thank God she went on to college. Kyle is now in his 3rd inpatient facility. So when Kathy was talking about the ages, it is true. Hopefully I answered your question. Social host law is applied, it should be applied, and we really need to be diligent on what we were saying before. If a parent thinks and feels that it's okay to drink and use drugs, your children know that. Your children do know that. You are the superintendent of your home.
All right, so I'm going to ask any of the panelists who feels qualified to answer. We have a lot of teenagers in the room. One second, I'm just going to get to this question a minute. We have a lot of teenagers in the room, and let's assume they've heard what we've had to say, and their parents have reinforced that you shouldn't drink or do drugs. And they want a strategy, like a refusal strategy, how to say no if a friend offers them a joint. Can one of the panelists give an appropriate answer for these teens to maybe remember next time they're offered drugs and they want to say no? Maybe Amanda?
Yeah, sure.
You want to come up here?
Yeah. Absolutely, these are good things to know, right? So you're confronted with the situation. Hey, come on, let's go hang out, let's do this, right? I just used this example recently in the Too Good for Drugs scenario with the 2nd grader. So your friend offers you something, you don't want to do it. You have a core belief system or a value system, right, that says you don't want to make that decision for whatever reason, and that's a good one to make. You could say something like, oh, my parents would kill me if they found out, right? That's my favorite, just blame it on the parents. They would kill me. I would never be able to play my soccer game on Sunday if I had, if I made this decision right now. I'm really up for a scholarship, I got a lot going for me, and I can't really risk that. Being honest with those types of things, making up something else to do that's productive and healthy, right? I don't really want to do that, but do you want to go to the movies after school? We can do something like that, right? Something that's going to help with the social factor of this whole situation, right? But also being able to provide a alternative or a way for you to feel comfortable in knowing and saying no. Absolutely. Anyone else have that for you?
Yeah, just
It's also illegal and you could go to jail.
Yep.
And also be truthful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
and
don't,
say no.
I don't want it. I don't need it.
Right, and
You
part
don't
of
have to be afraid to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Part of the thing, I think that, as parents, one of the things I always make sure with both my children is, when you're addressing your peers, you have to stand up straight. You have to look people in the eye. You have to be forceful. You can't be standing there, no, I don't want to take any drugs. And there was mention of self-esteem here tonight, in terms of kids' self-esteem. Part of what some of these issues are self-esteem. And how are we feeling as kids inside of ourselves, But you have to be confident, because as peer-to-peer, people will know you get eaten up alive out there, So you not only deliver these messages, but be confident when you say it, be forceful when you say it. And I want to add one other thing with regards to social hosting. Parents, be aware, there's a general obligations law here in New York State. You can be held civilly liable if someone causes injury to any person or property within your community. My husband's a plaintiff's attorney, and I know these things. So there are people that will be taking you to court if something happens, and these are things that we're not necessarily thinking about, as parents often will take keys away from kids. Well, what happens when that child goes and takes the keys back? Is he driving home? Is she driving home? But again, there's a lot at stake for our young teens, and there's a lot at stake for your families, especially if something, God forbid, does happen in the home surrounding underage drinking and drug use.
All right, the officers in the back are also welcome to answer if they'd like to. Well, the question is, what if no one over the age of 18 is home and there's a drug situation and there's a police involvement? Drugs or alcohol. No parents at home, no one over the age of 18, just a bunch of teenagers doing what they shouldn't do.
You don't have to ask permission to leave. You have the right to be safe. If you are going to further that by calling, an adult, the police, someone else to help you with that situation, if you feel you can't get out, then so be it. But the first thing you should be thinking of is, how do I get out of this situation? Because I know I don't want to be here. That's the biggest thing, to identify the fact that you don't want to be there.
Okay, but in terms of social host law or potential liability for the parents or the owners of the home, what happens if it's an underage drinking situation, no parents are
They're
home?
still ultimately responsible for their property. So whatever happens in your property, failure to secure your property against these type of events, that's still going to be your property. While it might not be more than punitive damages civilly, that you're still open to litigation at any point.
It becomes more of a civil issue as opposed to a criminal issue.
Okay, so if there's a, God forbid, an overdose or something bad happens with children in the house, the parents are still liable civilly, okay? Can someone, one of the panelists, please list exactly what drugs are opioids? What is heroin and fentanyl, what do they look like? Is it a pill? Is it something else? We need a little bit more detail about what it is to look out for.
I just wanted to mention that I have a bunch of handouts that the front page looks like this, it's yellow, but there's an article behind it. And the article is very important. It's called Contaminated Heroin, a Serious Danger, How Parents Can Protect Their Children. So it's the perfect article for all the parents here, at least it gives you an orientation. Heroin can look like a powder, or it can be dark, it can look like tar. And oxycodone is tablets, or they're pills that are prescribed. They can usually are round and they're white. And I think that the point that was made before, that it's really important for us as adults to make sure that our medications are not available to children, and also to start educating our children from the time that they're very, very small, like age 3, that you don't take medication that belongs to another person. I also think that as parents, it's important that we lead by example. That is like one of the most important things. I am a parent. I have 4 children, and I have 3 grandsons. And one of the rules of thumb is to not surround children with people who are behaving in ways that you do not want them to emulate. Your children are impressionable. They are learning from you. If there are people in your home who are abusing substances or who are drinking excessively, in their presence, they will think that that is okay to do. So I think leading by example. And I like the response of the police officer. I think it's perfectly okay to start teaching our children from the time they're 3 years old to say no, because they're going to have to say no to many things in early childhood, in middle school, and later on in high school. So the earlier you start to teach them that it is okay to say no, it is okay to leave a situation where they don't feel safe, and it is okay to get help immediately if they feel that they have been placed in a situation that is uncomfortable. Those are very important life lessons, and it prepares them to make better choices and to assert themselves. That I think is very important. Thank you.
All right, so we have a number of questions that are sort of related to one another, and any of the panelists can answer. So how can you tell the difference between a mental health issue and normal adolescent hormonal behavior? And akin to that question, teenagers are often stressed, moody, or difficult. Can you tell us the difference between when their teenage attitudes are an indication of emotional distress that would call for an intervention? So this is really related to the mental health issue. How do we know when it's really a red flag that maybe the child's at risk?
I think there are a lot of things that you can look for. One is your child able to establish relationships with other children? Is your child very withdrawn? Is your child a child that is often picked on or bullied by others, so they're having difficulty being assertive? And why is that happening? The other thing is there are children who can appear lethargic. They have difficulty getting up in the morning. They are always tired, or they will frequently tell you that they're not feeling well, and ask you to not go to school. And then when you say it's okay for them to stay home, they seem better. And very often that could be manipulation, but it can also be a sign of depression. Children who are depressed, it feels overwhelming to have to go through an entire day, and they get very, very good at telling you that they don't feel well, and they don't always know how to articulate what depression is. The other thing is, don't confuse depression with lack of motivation or laziness or stop complaining. Depression is a very serious illness, and a lot of our children are affected by depression, and it needs treatment. Anxiety is also different than being excited about things. Okay, all of us can get anxious. Like, you're talking in front of a big audience, you might feel a little more anxious than you would if you were talking to a close friend. But anxiety manifests in children as avoiding situations, avoiding too many situations. And that's also a red flag. You know, social anxiety is particularly something that you can observe in children. If you have 2 or 3 children, and you notice that one of your children has more difficulty than the others, that also is significant, because at least then the children are all different. You can have 3, 4 children, they're all unique and different, but you notice that they struggle more. Those are also early symptoms. The other thing is children that are very difficult to manage, who don't listen, who are oppositional, who are sarcastic, defiant, who will not accept rules, and it's extreme, and you find yourself in a situation where you're always arguing and having to combat. Those are also symptoms of illness, and they need to be addressed. Other things are like difficulty with attention, difficulty focusing, because then you know that there's something going on in the prefrontal cortex. They can't hold their attention as long as your other children can. They have difficulty completing what they start. Those are also early symptoms. And your family history. You know, look at your family history. How was your mom? How was your dad, your siblings? Are there other members in the family who suffer from mental illness that you know of, and other members of the family who suffer from addiction? Because these disorders do have a strong genetic component, so those kids may be more at risk.
Okay, so someone would like to know, are there any known cases of a marijuana overdose? And second question with that, can you explain vaping And can marijuana be used with vaping or e-cigarettes or something like that? Okay, thank you.
So I just want to touch on two things. One, Maria, thank you for that excellent answer. Something else that is interesting, or not interesting, I should say, that we should look for are 6 life areas that could be affected by substance use, right? So we're talking about adolescent teenagers with a less than fully developed brain. There's a lot of things we can look for, but there's also in adults as well, right? So we look for 6 life areas. The first is health, interpersonal, health and psychological, right? So is their hygiene changing? Are they gaining a lot of weight, losing a lot of weight? Are they sleeping a lot or not sleeping at all? You know, these are some changes in fluctuality in health. As well as psychological. Are they moodier than normal? Are they kind of in this funk where they've been for a while? Or vice versa? Are they usually someone that's withdrawn and now they're all of a sudden really social and have a lot of friends? Vocation and education. So are they avoiding school, absenteeism? Are their grades slipping? Are they not able to uphold some of their responsibilities? And work. Are they not going to work? Do they have a job? Are they not in that sort of area of their life? As well as financial, legal. How are they affording this, first of all? Legal, any kind of consequences, and any sort of craving. It's like this mindset that I can't function without it. So I'm constantly thinking about the next time I'm going to get it, where I'm going to get it, how I'm going to afford it, right? So that kind of lifestyle revolving around that. So just other types of things to look for in terms of drug use. Vaping and marijuana. I cannot speak on if there has been an overdose on marijuana. I will let officers if they've ever heard of that. But I can speak on vaping. Vaping is this huge trend that we're seeing on Long Island in every single school district that I'm in. So this sort of like an e-cigarette. Who knows what an e-cigarette is? I'm sure you've all seen and heard of it, right? Originally used to taper down nicotine levels for someone who's trying to, for smoking cessation. So a lot of vapes and e-cigarettes are used with nicotine. But they're also being used with like a water vapor that has flavoring. They're also being used with THC, which is a psychoactive ingredient in marijuana. So depending on the different type of vape pen, you can actually have cartridges of the wax that's extracted from marijuana. So it's this wax or oil base, right, that's put into a vape pen. So it's essentially melted down by the vapor, the heating system in the pen, the coils, and then it's produced into a vapor form where the person can smoke it. You'll see a little bit of smoke, but it disseminates very quickly. Very hard to smell because the traditional marijuana smell is very easy to detect. With the vape, it's very hard to detect. You can't necessarily smell that that's what they're smoking. So a lot of people sneaking this in school periods, sneaking this easily in classrooms. I've had plenty of administrators and teachers tell me that they're seeing it. So yes, you can vape marijuana and THC oil, and it's very often vaped out of vape pens. The other things to look for are these jewels. I know that's like the new thing now with young people, right? So nicotine or the e-cigarette, a jewel. Now 1 pod that's put into that jewel is equivalent to 1 pack of cigarettes. And so that person might be using it over time. Yeah. So it's a vape pen. So it's a way to use it in a form of like a little. It almost looks like a flash drive. If you know what a thumb drive looks like, right? So it's a heated up little coil system in this tiny little pen that you can insert and put the nicotine or the THC oil or the water vapor that's flavored, right? It heats it up and produces the vapor for you to smoke in the next exhale. So a lot easier to hide. That's what we're seeing in school districts across Long Island as well in terms of vaping. So a new trend that we're seeing.
And in a nutshell, marijuana 30 years ago was about 6 to 8% THC, the active ingredient. Now we've made medical marijuana, we've had strains, we've got these great scientists making stuff so that people don't have headaches, and we've made it all legal. So now we're taking those strains and we are compressing it into wax and oil forms, which are up to 90% THC. So from 6% to 90% active ingredients. These things are being put into vape pens for one, and these jewels that are all common, you hear the kids talk about putting the pods. Well, they can rip the top off the pod, take out the caffeine and the smells, and they can put the THC oils right into it. If they're not already getting, from states where it's legal, the actual pods that go right in that actually are labeled 91, 92% THC. As far as overdose, yeah, it's kind of, you get an overdose in stupidity, because what's happening is they're starting to take this marijuana, their brains aren't fully developed until they're 25 years old, they're desensitizing their brain to development, so once they get addicted, well, their brains stop developing until they come off of marijuana. So we are seeing, this is what's happening. So the vape pens are a huge way that we're seeing THC being introduced into daily lives everywhere. So it's not just about, oh, I'm smoking nicotine, because you know what? We don't know what's in there. It's not like we can walk around with a THC test kit and tell me what's in the Juul. So it's really a whole other culture that you kind of have to immerse yourself into to figure out what is THC, what is marijuana, because it's nothing that you thought it was from 30 years ago.
So officer, is that also in a hookah? Can you put marijuana in
You can
hookah?
put marijuana.
Because this is great, Nick.
Yeah, what happens is marijuana. Yeah, you better tie your hookahs up. Marijuana, the THC extracts, they come in many forms. Oil-based is just one of these forms. You will see people almost what we thought of back in the 70s as freebasing, using bongs, which they now call boilers. There are a lot of different ways to get this in. You're also going to see a big rise in edibles. Edibles are coming in from legal areas where now they have the oils, and it's not just brownies, it's gummy worms, it's lollipops, it's anything you can bake or cook, they can put these products in. It's not as simple as it used to be.
Guys, also real quickly on this, this is not something that's not here. Me and my partner Dan, we deal with all the school districts on the North Shore. We have the 3rd Precinct North. We are seeing this in your schools, okay? That's a fact. Also, where do you think most likely places to vape are in schools? Where there are no cameras, right? So we're talking to the principals and they're saying we're having issues in the locker rooms, we're having issues in the bathrooms, all right? So, and this is here, all right? This is not always the marijuana part, but the Juuls are everywhere, and the marijuana now, the medical marijuana, the 91%, is locally in the schools. Kids are stumbling through hallways.
Going to the hospital.
Because one hit of that is like the cigarette, like the pack of cigarettes, it's like smoking 10 joints, or I don't even know the number, but it's concentrated marijuana oil.
So tolerance, you need more over time to feel the same exact high. So for that student who's vaping or juuling, it's used as like a verb now, in between every single period, how much is their tolerance increasing? Rapid, and they're going to need more and more and more to feel the same exact type of way. So it's really just important to know
Thank
that.
you.
I just wanted to add one thing. This is not just young people that are doing this, okay? I can't stress this enough. I'm so glad that they're talking, that they're in your schools, and that they're saying that it's here. I know for a fact that adults are doing this as well. And by the way, adults are doing it constantly. And as I said before, we are the superintendents of our families, right? And if you think that a young person doesn't know what you're doing, be mistaken. Don't be mistaken, because I did when I was a young person. I knew how far I could get my father once I asked him, right? I knew exactly, we knew the whole relationship. But also there's heroin being used in this as well. If it's odorless, nobody can smell it. And by the way, it's a letdown of feeling any kind of restriction. If I know that you can't smell it, I'm feeling even more a feeling of a relaxation to do it and to use it. And so it's being used more because nobody can smell it. Weed or anything else that they're putting in there. And when you were talking about freebasing, what did they freebase? Cocaine. So cocaine is being used in these as well. Right? Anything you can liquefy, you can use in these.
Okay, so let's be aware of the
They're putting it in
vaping.
all of these.
Someone asked what's Narcan, and I mentioned I had done the training. Narcan is a nasal spray. I think the drug name is naloxone. Naloxone. It's available, I think, for free at pharmacies. I think Governor Cuomo passed a law that pharmacies have to offer it over the counter. So it is widely available. You can do the training very easily, and please sign up the sign-up sheet. So we've reached the conclusion of the program. It is a school night. On behalf of North Shore Action and our co-sponsor, the UPTC, we're hoping tonight is the start of a re-energized community conversation about drug addiction and mental health. On that note, I want to recognize the work of our elected officials, and I want to ask all of them to stand, because the elected officials are here, including Senator Phillips, Anna Kaplan, Ellen Birnbaum, Tony Durso. Our Board of Education, there's also Shai Sephardic Heritage Alliance. A lot of the board members are here. We also have our police officers, which were a wonderful addition to the program. Thank you so much for being here. And our local mayors as well. Town of North Hempstead Councilwoman Anna Kaplan was very helpful in planning this program. I want to especially recognize her. And Senator Elaine Phillips serves on the Heroin Task Force for New York. She's an expert in her own right, and she's agreed to stay after the program. There's a lot of people in this room, but a lot of the experts here have agreed to stay for a few minutes in case you have follow-up questions. And finally, with the goal of giving parents some practical tips and some homework, we've passed around a parent toolkit. And inside, we have a lot of useful information, warning signs, red flags, even a contract that you can sign with your children, a promise that they will not use drugs or drink alcohol to excess. And the last couple of pages have to do with suicide, which is a very serious subject. We will be doing a follow-up presentation with a very similar format in the spring regarding bullying, social media, depression, suicide, because social media, which is a part of the fabric of our children's lives, causes depression. That is a known fact. All of the studies that are coming out now are showing that, and our children are at risk for increased depression and bullying, and that will be something that we specifically address in our next forum. Thank you for being here tonight. I think Michelle Atwood also has a few words.
Just a few very couple of quick words. Thank you all for coming. It was extremely informative. I would be remiss in not thanking, I know Jackie did, but from a marketing standpoint, we can see what the turnout here was tonight was nothing short of incredible. So that being said, so much thanks to SHI, to UMJC, to GNCA. It was really a group effort amongst many other people, but it was a group effort getting the word out. We at the UPTC, we say that we build bridges within the community. That's our goal. This tonight was truly a bridge built, a strong bridge built that we have to really walk on, move forward with, and make a difference in our child's lives and in our own lives. So as Jackie said, please stay involved, get involved, sign up, and let's make a real difference. Thank you so much.